Good morning. Ayin Beis, volume 2. We are on page 1152. And fittingly, it's right about Rosh Hashanah, the themes that we're addressing. So to sum up, we're talking about the relationship between the Yesh and the Ayin. What do I mean? The Yesh HaNivra, the created existence, us, and our relationship with the Ayin, which is called Ayin because, number one, it's Yesh is substance that we relate to, material existence, and Ayin is no substance, meaning not substance of that we can identify. So it's called Eloi Dover. Second reason, because the Ayin is mysterious, it's beyond us. We can't comprehend it. Yet it's within us, but it's concealed. So that's where we're up to. And then he said, in the parentheses, he talked about the process of revealing it. But after the parentheses, he went back to the concealments. He said, Binyan HaMalchus, which of course is what happens at Rosh Hashanah, is from Gvuras. Why? Because for Malchus to be built, remember he's explaining how the Yesh comes into being by concealing the Ayin. You need Gvura to conceal the divine energy. Those are the 5 Gvuras of Zah that allow Malchus to emerge. So what's the connection between the first half of the phrase and the second? That the glory of your kingdom will be, they will speak about, and your strengths they will talk about, because the strength is what creates the Malchus. Strength, in this case, Gvura and Simtsum. And the same thing, the next step, in Malchus itself, as it rules and becomes related to the Am, Melech and Am, Ein Melech B'Layam, as the king relates to the nation, in this case, Malchus of Atzilus, as it relates to Biyah, Bri Yitzir Asiyah, it's also another Tzimtzum. It conceals the light, Shalei Izgala al Hanivra, should not be revealed on the creation, and it shouldn't be comprehended, in order that there should be a Yesh HaMetzias. So there's a concealment in Atzilus between Zah and Malchus, and there's a concealment that Malchus has in order to be able to give birth to a Yesh and a Metzias. And that's what it means that the Ayin from the Yesh HaNivra is called Ayin. So I'm going to start from there. Even though we read it, I'll start from V'zehu. The line begins with B'chinas Yesh HaMetzias. It says like this: V'zehu ma sha'ayin shal Yesh HaNivra nikra Ayin ein zeshu b'chinas Ayin be'etzem. And this is when we say that the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra. Remember, there's 2 levels. The Ayin breaks into 2. There's the Ayin of the Yesh HaMiti, is the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra. We're talking now the Ayin, the divine energy as it relates to existence. When you say it's called Ayin, it's not, you're not trying to say Ayin be'etzem. It's completely non-existent, like we said by the Ayin Amiti, completely insignificant, not teifus mokim at all. That's not the focus here. That's not the meaning here. Ein zeh shubchinas Ayin be'etzem. We're not talking about an Ayin be'etzem that's fundamentally in a state of total bittul. Rak shal shem shein nemusig b'nivrayim. But due to the fact, and it's named that way, due to the fact that it's concealed, that it's not comprehended by the creations or the creatures, that's why it's called Ayin. Ayin as in, I don't know what it is. Ma, if you remember, like ma and man. Lo yodu mahu, we don't know what it is. It's not that it's about complete bittul, it's about we, relative to us, it's beyond us, basically. Now he continues. I remember he referred to B'yem Shmini Atzeres Tofresh Ayin Daled. I read from it yesterday, back in page 684. Peches Tofresh Pei Daled. Peches, 1 second, because to understand this better, you need to know what it says there. But so let me just refer to it again. Peches, yeah, 688. So now he's going to say, remember we spoke on the last page, going back to the Ayin, he made it clear, abundantly clear, that there's 2 elements of how the Ayin and Yesh relate to each other. One is richuk, distance, because the mere fact to create something is shalei be'erech. The yesh ma'ayin has two things. One, that there's a distance, and one, that there's a closeness. So he's now going to apply those two elements to Malchus. Does Malchus get close to and relate to existence, or does it stay removed from? So there's two aspects here. One is that it gets closer, but it remains still concealed, which is why it's still called ayin. In other words, you can't call yesh miyesh. That you can't do. By ilav olol, we said cause and effect. The yesh relates to the yesh. It identifies with it. The cause, the effect identifies with the cause. It relates to it. It sees it. It comprehends it. It relates to it. By yesh and ayin, there's a distance, but it's not complete distance where the ayin is beyond completely. It's within the yesh, but it's not comprehensible within the yesh, which of course from the interface point of view is vital because it means it relates to us, but it's beyond us. If it was completely beyond us, then there would be nothing to hold on to. There'd be nothing to aspire to. Here, you can at least daven on Rosh Hashanah and say, "V'yeda kol pol kata falta," that every product should recognize its producer. If it was completely removed, the producer is completely a mystery. So the art can relate to the artist as the artist relates to the art. And then you climb and move beyond higher levels. So that's why it's so important, the kiruv and richuk here. Because you want something close so we can relate ultimately, but you want it to be also above our heads and beyond us. So like when a teacher teaches a student and something remains above the student's head, it could be completely above, which means he won't get it for a long time, or it could be right now relative to where you are, it's beyond you, but the little work and effort, you'll be able to get it. So it's an ayin that is relative to you, but it's an ayin that's accessible ultimately. So he's going to say like this now. In Malchus, he says, V'hainu, now that we said the reason it's called ayin, it's not ayin be'etzem. Ayin be'etzem is completely removed. We talk about that it's an ayin that is relative, that we can't understand it. So if you remember, we spoke about the difference between two levels in Meichus, in Chachmas Tima or Meichus Tima. Sosum be'etzem and sosum only relative. It could be concealed, meaning you can access it, but right now it's concealed. It could be concealed be'etzem, that you can never access it. Like we talk about atzmus or eir atzmi, perhaps. Okay, so he says now the following. V'hainu. And this v'hainu, this means Sheba Bezin Yonim Sheba Malchus Be'inya Yisavos. That the two elements, two aspects, or two dimensions in Malchus in the matter of creation, Sheba B'chinas Richuk, one that's in a form of distance, in a state of distance, and others were B'chinas Kiruv, and one is in a state of Kiruv. So on one hand, the Melech is Ram v'nisav v'nisgav ma'oid. Shichme ma'ili gavei mekolam. The Melech is greater than the nation. But still, to be a Melech required a Yerida, because he's really beyond being a king as well. That's why in Zoh you need the Tzimtzum, the 5 Gvuris, for him to even want to be interested in being a king. But even when he's a king, so there's two elements. On one hand, he's beyond, he's higher than the nation. But on the other hand, he's their king. On Rosh Hashanah, that's what we want. We're not looking for God to be like one of us. We want him to be our king. We want him to relate to us. But yes, we want him to be above us. That's the whole point of what God is God. So it's godliness above us, but in a way that relates to us. So he's saying, so Malchus, these two things, Kiruv and Richuk and Kiruv, Hinikriya Shem Ayin, Eine Amiti Mamish. Calling it the name Ayin is not a totally accurate or it's not a mitis ayin. It's not the true meaning and definition of ayin. Any amiti doesn't mean here sheker, God forbid. It doesn't mean it's false. He means it's not the true definition, the absolute definition of ayin. Eine amiti sheshem ayin eine amiti mamish. He's going to explain. The bebchinas richuk hashem ayin hu rak sholei bebchinas dover debiyah. The b'chinas richuk, when we say that it's removed and it's distant, we're only saying that it's not a dover like biyah. In biyah, you call it a dover. It has substance. So you can call it a yesh v'nivra, nivra v'yesh and mitzias. In Malchus, because it's removed, you can't call it that. That's why you call it Ayin. In other words, it's a relative Ayin. You can't call it Ayin Amiti. Ubabchinas Kiruv, and obviously for sure, and the way it stands in a state of Kiruv and closeness to the creation, he's now putting into place the two meanings. Here it's called Ayin only due to the fact that we don't comprehend it. Okay, so you're adding now something to what he said in the previous page. Remember the previous page, he said two reasons why it's called Ayin. One is because it's not substance. So it's a different substance. The Ayin that creates is not of the same DNA, if you wish. It's not made of the same building blocks and that the Yesh is made of. And the second we said was that it's not comprehensible to us. We don't understand it. So now he's saying this is the difference in Richuk and Kiruv from Malchus. The element of Richuk, Malchus is removed, is saying that the substance of Biyah, or the Ayin, is not made of the same substance as Biyah is made of. And the second element, how Malchus relates to existence, is in a way closer, and there we call it Ayin because it's not understandable. I thought initially, to be honest, that these two were like the same, just two aspects of the same idea of Ayin, that it's not of our substance, but it has its own reality. And the second, it's not comprehensible. But here he's making it clear, no, it's two levels actually. Not comprehensible is actually closer to us than not of the same substance, basically. That's not a dover. I shouldn't say the same substance, it's a wrong expression. I should say not of substance as we call what we could define as dover. That's why it's called loy dover. Okay, so interesting. So Malchus, the two level. So he's clearly referring to, because he says as a matter of fact, that Malchus has these two levels of Kiruv and Richuk, and he didn't mention it specifically. So I'm assuming, I'm just going back to page 688. I think he did speak about it there. Let me just see. Okay. I don't see it explicitly, but I almost recall it somewhere. Okay, fine. So now he's tied it together to Malchus, but we have the picture that we have right now, because now he's going to conclude this whole thing with Das Tacht and Das Elyon. Before we go there, so what we've learned is essentially that Ayin has two different meanings. If you're talking about the Ayin from the Yesh HaNivra, Yesh HaMiti, there it means it's not Teifas Mokim at all. I'm summing up now the last 2 pages, basically. What he began at the bottom of page 1150. That the meaning, Legabe the Mashpia, is different than the meaning Legabe the Makabel. The Legabe the Mashpia, Ayin means it's completely insignificant. Real Ayin, completely bottled. The Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra, you can't say that. So you say two things. It's not Ayin, it's not a Yesh, therefore it's Ayin. It's not of this type of matter that we know. And two, it's not Lei Musig, it's Ein Musig. We don't comprehend it. Now we added that this is what Malchus, this is the process how Malchus is the Kayach of Yesh Ma'ayin, that Malchus is Ayin Legabe Biyah, and the two elements is that Malchus as it stands removed. Let's call it Malchus as it's an Atzilus. Now I remember. What we learned was remember Malchus as it's an Atzilus, and how Malchus goes into Biyah. So as it stays in Atzilus, it's Leidover. It's a different reality than ours. As it comes into Biyah, Bekiruv, it's not understood. So there's an ayin that enters into Biyah, but it remains incomprehensible on its own, without Aveda and so on. Okay, so that's what we learned. Now he's going to go back. If you remember, he started using the word Das Tachten. So now this is the difference between Das Tachten and Das Elyon and Das Tachten. Das Elyon is the perspective from above, how above, how the mashpia sees existence and the ayin included. And das tachten is how the makabel sees it. That's what he's going to go now and say. Just 1 second. Okay. So now he continues like this. V'zeu ha'hefresh, and this is the difference. This can be like a new paragraph. I mean, it's obviously continuing, but it's like a new. It's really bringing us back to the beginning of the last mimer, das tachten das. So he says v'zeu ha'hefresh, and this is the difference by Beis Deis, the two perspectives or the two perceptions. Das Elyon and Das Tachten. Now, where were these Beis Deis, these 2 days mentioned? They began the whole mimer of Rosh Hashanah. 2 mimer back, I'll refer you to the page. The bottom of page 1140. That's where he started. If you remember, Bira Inyan, if you look there, just look there a second. In a Beis Yediyas Hanal is Keil Deis Havaya. The 2 days, Das Elyon and Das Tachten. And that's where he went into the whole discussion of Yesh, Ayin, and Yesh. So the Rebbe Rashab is now going back 12 pages, a lot more pages in Sadik Dalet. It's a long time ago because we learned so much in between, but in fact, it's really 12 pages. That there's the two perceptions, the 2 levels of perception or perspectives, I would say, 2 perspectives. To understand that, he went to Yesh, Ayin, Yesh. We did a lot of learning about the Yesh, Amiti, the Yesh Anivra, the Ayin in between, the 2 levels of Ayin, the 3 interpretations in the 2 levels. And then ultimately to the 2 different meanings of Ayin from the perspective of the Yesh Amiti and from the perspective of Yesh Anivra. So now he's concluding. He says, and these are the difference between the 2 perspectives. They're called Das Elyon, the Das Tachten, the perspective from above, like the bird's eye view, and Das Tachten, the perspective from below. Das HaMashpia, v'Das HaMakabel. So he's very much designated their names. So he gave it Das Elyon and Das Tachten, and now he's calling it Das HaMashpia, the perspective of the transmitter, and the perspective of the recipient. So what's the difference, he says now? The Das Elyon, hu Das HaMashpia, the perspective from above Elyon, is the Das HaMashpia, shelamayli yesh ulamata ayin. What is that perspective? That lamayla is the yesh. What's the true yesh? The true yesh amiti. Remember, what is the true and absolute reality? Atzmus, yesh amiti. As we learned at length, is the only thing that does not have a source. Everything else is not could exist, could not exist. This is mechuyev hametzius and metzius imatzmusi and built the metzius nimtza. All those themes and ideas we learned earlier. So from the perspective of above, and you put yesh and ayin, what's the yesh? Yesh amiti is the true yesh. So yesh, that's what he says here. Das hamashpia shelamayli yesh, that above, meaning the source. That's the true yesh. Not yesh as in yesh mitzias, a substance. Yesh as in true faranenkeit, as he put it, true existence. Ulamata ayin, and everything below it is ayin. Hainu sha'eru ayin mamish legabe atzmus. Everything below that, of course, we're talking about Eir, because that's the next level, is ayin mamish, not just relative. It's completely insignificant. Legabe ha'atzmus, compared to atzmus. The kula kamei kilo chashiv, because everything before him is like nothing. Kilo, like kiloi, it's loy. Kilo chashiv means it's like non-existent, has no value. Ve'ena ela b'shem klal. And it's not even, it doesn't even rise with a name. It doesn't even, you can't even define it by name. That's how insignificant it is. V'al shem zeh nikra ayin. And because of that, due to that the definition that it has no name, that's why it's called ayin. Nothing. So it doesn't mean nothing. When we use the word nothing in English, it means nothing happening. Or here it doesn't mean nothing in that sense. Nothing here means nothingness compared to a true reality called atzmus. That's the perspective of Das Elyon. What about Das Tachten? Das Tachten, perspective from below. There's the opposite. The Das Tachten hu Das HaMakablim. That's the perspective of the recipients, the one standing below receiving the divine energy and being created. The Ma'ayin Liyesh. The Das Tachten hu Das HaMakablim, the Ma'ayin Liyesh. There is from Ayin to Yesh, the exact opposite. From the above, it's from Yesh to Ayin. The God, Atzmus, beyond everything, just chooses to manifest and express through Oyer, which is completely beyond him. Because there's nothing that's even, nothing has anything in common with Atzmus. So there it's Yesh to Ayin. From below, it's Ma'ayin Liyesh. The ayin of the Yesh HaNivra now is creating and bringing into being the Yesh. Shenikra HaMokir HaMahava B'Shem Ayin. The source that creates is called Ayin. So let me just read. V'das tachnu das HaMakam the Ma'ayin Liyesh. Shenikra HaMokam B'Shem Ayin Hu Al Shem. And that's Hu Al Shem. That's due to the fact not because it's true Ayin, nothingness. But Hashem Shulei Dover B'Bchinas Dover B'Nivroim. Because it's not substance, it's not something that you can define as Nivroim define themselves. So we call it ayin. It's not like anything. When you say a table, a chair, even yesh mi yesh, from one state to another, it's all within the same realm called davar, what we call empirical existence. The ayin is beyond empirical. It's beyond that type of substance. So therefore, it calls it loy davar b'chinas davar hanivroim. That's why it's called ayin. And the second reason, and due to the fact that it's not comprehended, it's not understood by the Nivroim. Al Shem Zeh Nikra Ayin. And on that's the reason that it's called Ayin. He uses Al Shem Zeh. Shem is a name. But Al Shem Zeh also means because of that. So due to that, it's called Ayin. So there you have it. Two perspectives, one going from Yesh to Ayin, one going from Ayin to Yesh. And the Ayin means something different, and the Yesh means, the Yesh Amiti means true reality. Yesh Nivra means a created reality. The Ayin Amiti means it's completely nullified and completely kilok, insignificant compared to the Yesh Amiti. And the Ayin of the Yesh Nivra relates to the Yesh HaNivra. It's only called ayin because it's not substance like creation, and it's not understandable to us. Okay. Any questions? No questions? Good. V'hinei. And now, going back to that verse. Remember we learned before with Malchus and Gvura, that in order to create Malchus, you need Tzimtzum. In order for Malchus to relate to Biyah, you need Vaita Tzimtzum. Kiruv Richuk. So he's going right now. He says now, in Achas Shenemar, after, because it says, Kved Malchuscha Yemeru v'Gvurasecha, it doesn't go to the Yidaberu, he doesn't bring the word Yidaberu, it's not relevant here. That this verse is referring to the gvuras, the concealments and the tzimtzumim, in order to create existence. That's why you need gvura sechi yudaber. That's why gvura relates to malchus, because malchus is about relating to existence, and to do that you need gvura. You need a limitation, a concealment. So he says after that, after we say that, achar meaning here, not achar due to the fact. Nemar achar kach, afterwards, the next verse, it says, or not in the next verse, the same verse, I think, it says, continues, the verse continues, Leidia lebnei adam gvurei sov, kveid hadar mulchase, kveid hadar malchuse. So, the second half of the verse goes like this. So the beginning of the verse says, kveid malchusche yemeru. It will declare kveid malchusche, the glory of your kingship, or of your sovereignty, your kingship. V'gvureisecha yedaberu, and speak about your strengths, your power. We learn now what does power mean? The power that the concealment that allows malchus to become functional. Both malchus becoming and malchus creating. So then it goes on and says, Lahidia, all this that the malachim will say, they will speak kved malchuscha and gvurusecha, Lahidia lebnei adam. This is in order to inform, to announce, to media, to inform the human being, the bnei adam, the human race. Gvureisov, God's strengths. V'kved hadar malchuste, and the glory of the beauty of his kingship. So in other words, the declaration of God's kved malchuse, and the statement about his strengths and simsum is, there's a purpose to it. The purpose is to let us know about this gvurus and malchus. So he's going to teach what that means. And this goes back again to the pages that I mentioned, Tafresh Peiches 688. He's using words from there. So I'll fill in from whatever is not clear here, because it's very bekitzer here, relatively speaking. So it's very clear that the Rebbe Rashab is saying this because it's a Rosh Hashanah Maimer, so he's connecting the themes of this Maimer now to Rosh Hashanah. So here's what he says. Pirush, what does this mean? Gvureisov. What does it mean? He's letting us know, notifying us, making us aware of his gvurus. Pirush Gvureisov, hein hei gvurus de ima. This is not the hei gvurus of Zah. Before we said there are 5 gvurus in Zah that are necessary to allow malchus to emerge. Now he's saying these are hei gvurus in Bina, in Ima, in the mother. This is Bina. Shein gvurus memutakes. These are sweetened severities. So gvurus itself, I don't know if he's going to say it here, but in generally in gvurus there's 2 stages, 2 types of gvurus. There are gvurus that are, on the obvious level, very severe. They're called gvurus, actually bitter gvura. And then there's gvuras that are sweetened gvura, like he brings in Tanya about matamim, that you take, let's say, a bitter food, and when you spice it properly and you do the right preparation, you can take something and make it into mamtakim. So you can take something that was initially sharp and make it very sweet. It's called sweetened gvuras. It's not sweet initially, like sugar. It's taking something that wasn't sweet, but you turned it and made it into sweet. It's a certain level. So we learned back in page 688, he learned that, if you remember, I mentioned there's 3 tzimtzumim, he says, that are necessary to go from malchus into biyah. So there's the hei gvurus of Zah, there's the hei gvurus of Bina, and the third one, might as well look, we'll have to guess. He said there are 3 levels of gvurus. Hei gvurus of malchus, that are mimshach b'malchus l'tzedek binyana. Okay. Then later on page, the second level of gvurus is on page 693. They are called Hey Gvurus Shneim Shenitnim B'Yeseda. It's a level gvura to wake up malchus. Not sure what level that is. He just says that. Okay. And then there's the third level where he talks about, where's the third? 1 second. Just to give Zehegvus Hashim, V'yeshem. And the third one is at the bottom of page 693. I thought that was Bina. Oh. Okay, my mistake. What's this? Okay, I thought that the three levels, one was from Bina. I think I still remember something like that, but okay, I don't remember now. But regardless, he's clearly saying that the Gvuresav, that is the Hidiyah Lebnei Adam, is sweetened Gvura. And he's going to explain it with the Zohar. Like it says in Zohar Yisrei, page 83a, on the pasuk Mi Yamalel Gvuras Hashem. So Mi Yamalel, Malel has, I believe, two meanings. Yamalel means like to speak. But I think Yamalel, like he's going to say, has also another touch, like from the word Milo, speaking like a word. Mi Yamalel Gvuras Hashem. The Pirush Yamalel, Meloshin. What is this next expression? Anybody knows?
Can't find it. Wow.
What?
I cannot find the page at UL.
1152, the bottom of 1152. We're two lines from the, two lines from the bottom. Aleph Kuf Nun Beis.
I see it. Shkayach.
What is the expression? V'katafta melilos?
Yeah. V'kotafto melilos beyodecho. It's a chumash.
What does it mean?
I think it's talking about small grapes. Very small grapes.
So what's v'katafta?
You grabbed. Melilos. Small pieces of grain, I think, is also.
Okay, fine. So he's teaching mi yamal gvuras Hashem from the word v'katafta melilos, shu gam ken inye richuch. Richuch means to rub, to like soften up. Shemerachech es hagvuras.
It's in chumash dvarim. Ki savoy bekomas reyecho v'kotafto melilos beyodcho v'chermesh lo yisonif al komas reyecho.
Do you have an English translation? What does Rashi say? Okay, fine. Bottom line, Yamalel is from the word richuch. Richuch means can rub. It also means to soften up, from the word rach. Shemerachech es hagvuras. The gvuras are raw and hard in a sense. And merachech es hagvuras. So the katafta melila, I don't think just means grab. He's saying it means more than just grab. It means that you're like softening it. That's what it sounds like he's saying here. V'hainu, this means mi. Remember, the pasuk is mi yamalel gvuras Hashem. The level of mi shu b'chinas bina. Oh, I'm sorry, and this happens through the level of mi, the level of bina. So mi yamalel would be who? Who is going to be yamalel gvuras Hashem? And the way he's teaching it here, based on the Zohar, mi means the level of bina is yamalel, like a statement, not a question. That the level of mi, bina, is yamalel, soften up the gvuras Hashem. Essentially, it's sweetening, as he says, I'm talking gvuras. So why is that? Why is bina do that? By the way, there's a star here that refers us to the Hesofis. We haven't had that in a while. So let me just see. Probably just a short note. Yeah, right here. So if you look in the back of, I'll just read it. There's a parenthesis where the Rebbe Rashab wrote, Ein tzarech lahaitik. There's no need to copy this. This was a note to the person who would copy. Remember, the Rebbe Rashab wrote all this out and then he gave it to someone to copy. It's called a maitik. That's how they copied. So he would write sometimes on a line or a few lines, Ein Sorach Lahaitik. The Rebbe in Tavshim Mem Gimel said that a Rebbe writes Ein Sorach Lahaitik means there's whatever reason he didn't want it to be printed or didn't feel it was relevant to the flow. But to say that it was a mistake, for sure not, because he could have crossed it out. So the Rebbe said it should be printed in the Maimorim and write a footnote that on this, the Rebbe Rashab wrote Ein Tzarech Lahaitik. So that's why we have it. So what does he say? It's a parenthesis. He's just bringing a medrash. It could be the Rebbe Rashab who wrote it for himself, or he didn't want to, maybe it was like just a note, not necessarily important for the understanding. However you explain, we can only speculate why he wrote Ein Tzarech Lahaitik. But this is what it says. If you look on the back of the Sefer here, page Aleph of Esophagus, he says, "B'medrash Rabbah shira shirim al posuk harei b'sheshanim." He's citing a medrash Rabbah on the posuk in Shira Shirim, harei b'sheshanim, the one who grazes among the roses in the rose garden. Shalibam rach k'sheshana, that their hearts, that's what the medrash says, referring to the heart of Knesset Yisrael, most likely, is rach k'sheshana. It's soft, like the petals of a rose. You ever touch the petals? They're very soft. So it could be, he's just bringing that. I'm just reading what it says in Ein Tzarech Lahaitik without commentary. So he says that after the words bina. So bottom line is bina, we're going to learn now why bina does this. Takes gvura and it's mamtikit. It softens it, sweetens it. Like based on the Zohar, mi yamalel from the word softening. They say rach, like elam yeh odem rach kekona alte kosher keoras. Rach, be flexible, be yielding like a reed, not kosher, not hard and rigid, like a cedar tree. So bottom line is that he's talking now a level of gvuras that are not raw simtsum. They're not just concealments. There's a sweetening, there's a softening. We'll soon see where he's going with this. Why does Bina do this? Why Dafka Bina? Does something to the Gvuras, like softens it. So he says, Zeu mipnei shah meichin, because meichin heim bechlal bechinas chesed v'rachamim. Intelligence, intellect in general, is in a state of chesed, of kindness and compassion. We learn why. Because basically a person with intelligence, meichin, doesn't get quickly, first of all, upset. And second of all, the general nature of meichin is savlonus, is patience, it's listening. We're not talking about an arrogant intelligence. We're talking about healthy intelligence. Healthy intelligence is in general a compassionate, that's what it says, a chochem is kind. So even though seichel is not midas, but in general, meichin softens gvuras. Like for example, if someone gets really angry, real gvura, you get really angry. If you allow your meichin to come into play, or you talk to someone who is more objective and more reflective instead of impulsive, what will the meichin do? They will soften the blow. You'll say, oh, you know what, let me think it over. Let me not just react. Bottom line, meichin is a softener of midas. Meaning, it doesn't let midas just go completely aggressive and raw without being tamed. That's Chassidus explained. There's a lot of aspects to this, but generally, meichin, as he says, is chesed v'rachamim.
Even though bina is on the left side, so to speak.
Yeah, in meichin itself, bina is gvura, correct? So yes, but it's gvura of meichin. Remember, it's discretion in meichin. What is bina? Bina breaks down details. So it's gvura in the sense where it takes the chesed, so to speak, of chochmah, which is the pure light, a pure nekuda, and breaks it down. Remember, gvura has many roles. It's not only severity. Gvura also has the role of breaking things apart, discretion, discipline. So you have to remember, gvura has a lot of meanings. When we talk about severities, we talk about severe, the idea of a severity, like gvura, not gvura, bina gvura. Gvura of gvura. Remember, bina is on the left side, correct, but afterwards is gvura. So bina is not gvura. Bina is just on the left side. In meichin, there's the right brain, the left brain, so to speak. where the right brain connects things and the left brain separates. But the point being here is, so even though the good point that you're making, but nevertheless, and he says, so Beklal Moichin is Chesed Nachmin. Va'ikar, who, top of page 1153, Mipnei Sheizgalus Atik Hu Bebina. Okay, he's explaining now why Taka does Bina have this element of softening of Chesed and Rachamim. He says the Ikar is because the revelation of Atik is in Bina. So Atik, for sure, Atik comes from pleasure. Atik is from a level that's completely beyond Gvura. Less Smeila B'hai Atik, it says. There's no Gvura in Atik. There's no left side in Atik. So he's not really explaining it in Chabad Eisius. He's just saying the levels because he's relying that we learned about it. Because he's now going to refer, you may remember this, he's connecting it back to other Maimorim, the Maimar Shomer Esem HaShabbos, which goes back quite a while. To look it up where. Yeah, well, I'll look at it in a moment. I think, okay, we'll see in a second. So he says like this, Ubina Nikra Kedesh HaKadoshim. You remember when he spoke about Shvion, the seven on every level, Bina, the Bina of Biyah, the Bina of Atzilus, the Bina and Atik. There he spoke about how the Aliyah of Shabbos, how everything goes up to Bina. Bina is the seventh from the bottom up. We don't count Malchus. So the seventh from the bottom up. You remember he spoke about Bina going to the highest levels. So he says, Bina Nikra Kedesh HaKadoshim. Remember, Kedesh HaKadoshim is what? 3 levels. Kedesh HaKadoshim. Holy of holies. So you have 1 level of holy, and you have holies plural. So you have 3 levels. It's generally speaking, Keser Chochmem Bina is Kedesh HaKadoshim. We learned it back then. So in every world, there's a Kedesh HaKadoshim. It's the holiest realm, but the holy is the Gimel, it's called the Gimel Rishenis. Remember, we talked about the Gimel Rishenis. In every 10 spheres, there's the Zayin Tachtenis, the 7 lower ones that are meant to be more mashpia downward, and the Gimel Rishenis is like call it the brain trust, if you wish, or even more than brain. It's Keser Chochmem Bina. You don't count Das in this structure. So Keser Chochmem Bina is Kedesh HaKadoshim, the 3 levels of Kedesh. So he says, Bina called Kedesh HaKadoshim, why? Shekelelas kol ha-gimel Rishenis. It encompasses all 3. So generally, when you speak about the Gimel Rishenis, they are all encompassed in Bina. Commission is bar le'il, like we learned earlier, the Maimar Dibra Masel Shomer Esem HaShabbos. If I recall correctly, that is, page 1085. Yeah. Actually, it wasn't so far back, but relatively speaking, it's a long time ago. This was all about man. We talked about man and Shabbos, how Shabbos elevates to levels that are Atik and the highest levels. So if you look there on page 1088 and through 1090, you'll see this whole discussion, all the way actually through 1091. The discussion about these levels. It's not really, I don't need to sum it up, but the point here is that Mi is the level of Bina, and Bina is the power to sweeten Gvuras. Now, if this was not a Rosh Hashanah Maimer, I don't know if the Rebbe Rashab would have added this. Not to say it's some add-on, it's obviously part of the Maimer, but clearly he's connecting the themes of Yeshanayin and is moving it into a Rosh Hashanah message. Because Rosh Hashanah is Yom Hadin. And he wants to talk about the Binyan HaMalchus and Gvuras Sechi Yedaberu, etc. And Leidia Lebnei Adam Gvuresav, which is what he's doing now, is explaining what that means. So here's what he says further.
So hey Gvuras the Imo are Gvuras Memutokis, right? It's not Gvuras, it's not like hey Gvuras the Zor.
Exactly right. Right. Now he's going to say exactly that. Okay, so this was a commercial Barlil Dibra Maskel Shomer Esem HaShabbos, the discussion about Bina. Now he's going back to the theme. The theme is that what? That Lohidia Lebnei Adam Gvuresov, to notify, to inform the human beings, the human race of his Gvuras. So he's saying this is Gvuras of Bina. What he's informing Bnei Adam, meaning what he's mamshich to Bnei Adam, to human beings, is the Gvuras of Bina, which are Gvuras, as he said, mumutokes, sweetened. Now he says, umisham nimshach b'malchus. So now he asks, so that's why from me, Yimalel, from Bina, from there it transmits into Malchus, Lahamtika gvura is the malchus, to sweeten and to soften the gvuras, the severities of malchus. Remember, we learned before that malchus needs tzimtzum. It needs the hey gvuras of zah to conceal and diminish and limit the light, so malchus could emerge. But the focus there is tzimtzum, not gili. Then malchus itself needs to go through another tzimtzum, that the yesh should not feel the ayin. So you need the tzimtzum we said about that. That's what we learned before. Now he's talking about the process of sweetening these tzimtzumim, meaning softening them, that we start seeing a gili, like similar to the parentheses where we say, v'yeda kol pol ke'ataf alto. We want to reveal now. So we have to keep in mind there's two things going on. The creation process is a process of concealment. But remember, tzimtzum b'shvil hagili. It's not a concealment as an end in itself. It's only in order for us to become an independent consciousness. But it doesn't end there. The next step is, now that you're an independent consciousness, like he said, once there was the tzimtzum and the kav comes afterwards, now you can start the process of return, retracing the steps and revealing the elokus that was concealed. Like the mashal, the concept we bring many times, the Rebbe, Tu B'Shvat Lametes, I spoke about it, Chaf Aleph El, that the father conceals himself from his child. It's not that is a severity. It's a concealment on its own. But that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to the ingenuity of the child to find the father. Golus and Helam is when we give up looking. But that's not the kavanah. So there's two sides to gvura. One is its purpose of concealing in order for us to exist. And then the process of sweetening this concealment so we can start feeling the oyr, the gilui, the chesed, the gvuras memutokis. Unfortunately, a lot of people were trained to think of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur only as gvuras. Yomim Noraim, awesome days, Noira v'oyim. That's like gvura. And they forget that it's what's called the Gila Barada, which means we celebrate through trembling. When you stand before the king, deep inside, there's deep simcha. It's not just fear. On the surface, there's respect. You don't start making somersaults and dancing in front of the king. We do that on Sukkot. So the second half of the month is when we megala, you say, B'kesel hayem chagenu, chagenu Sukkot is megala, that which was concealed. So I'm just showing the whole theme of this month, Rosh Hashanah Tishrei, is the first half is Gvura Begoli, but Chesed Behelim. And then the second half is the Chesed starts coming out Begoli. That's why it says, Smeli Tachas L'Reishi, V'yamini Tichapkeni. Smeli Tachas L'Reishi, Smel Gvura, Tachas L'Reishi is beneath my head. It says in Shir Hashim. That's the first half of Tishrei, till after Yom Kippur. The second half is Yemini. Yemin Chesed Techapkeni embraces me, like the Sukkah embraces. This is brought in many Maimorim based on Zohar, Kabbalah, and so on. If you have my book 60 Days, I have a whole explanation on the whole thing. And then the pasuk continues, Yishakenim in Shikas Piyu, the kiss, because it's all about love, is Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. That's when there's the intimacy, the yichud, Ano Malkabel Chedehi. So the whole month of Tishrei is really a structured rebuilding of love and connection after the Chet HaEgel. Remember, the whole thing began, Moshe Rabbeinu went on the mountain to get Salachti Kidvarecha, forgiveness. So Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Mishneh Atzeres, Simchas Torah is all part of a process of fixing and reconciling and re-embracing and finding love after there was betrayal, after something was broken. If you want to put it in
maybe
that
that's why it's called Yomim Noiroim and not
Exactly.
and not Yomim Ayumim. Noiro ve'oyim. Ayumim.
Okay, good point. Yeah.
Gvura
Oyim,
Mamish.
Yeah. But I think in the davening we say Hayem Oyim V'Neira. We do say the word, but yeah. The bottom line is
Who Noiro ve'oyim? The day or the Eibishter?
okay.
Und es nicht Teikev Kedusha Sayim, yeah, Kedusha Teikev Hayim, Kiva Noiro ve'oyim. Okay.
Okay, but that's not a stira because there's different levels of gvura. But the point is, that's what he's saying now. Umisham nimshuk malchus lahamtika gvura is the malchus. V'zehu. So the second half was what? Lehidia lebnei adam gvureisov. So he says, what's lehidia? See, here's the diuk here. The first half, it said, you're like talking, we're discussing, we're like almost what's the word I want to say? Like they're all talking about Hashem's gvuras, his awesome ability to conceal. Adam is teaching.
Hey gvuras the zo, or
Right.
gvuras is the zo.
Exactly. But Lahidiyah Libnei Adam is like what it's letting us know that's coming from Bina, that the whole thing is really to sweeten the Gvuras. He doesn't say that explicitly, but it sounds like that. Then continues the last half of the verse says, the Kfeid Hadar Malchuse. So Lahidiyah Libnei Adam Gvuresav, we just touched that as the Hey Gvuras of Bina that sweetens and softens. The Kfeid Hadar Malchuse. We also notified and informed about the glory and of the beauty of his kingship. Pirush, so he's going to teach what this means now. Hadar Malchuse means Lias Gili Hamelucha. In the first half, it doesn't say Hadar. It says Malchuse Kfeid Malchusche Yemeru. Doesn't say Hadar. So he's saying Hadar Malchuse, because Malchuse could be concealed. Hadar is like full glory, the Hadar, the beauty, the Shenkite, the splendor. That's a good word. The splendor of his kingship. So he says this is Gili Hamelucha. So both halves. Bina, the first is Lahidiyah Libnei Adam Gvuresov. That's Bina, the softening of the Gvuras. And now he's saying the Gili Hamelucha. That it's the revelation of the Melucha. Va'inyan hu.
It's fascinating.
I know.
Because the Gvorascha and the Lahidiyah is two different Gvura. The first one, Gvorascha in Aberu, is Hey Gvuras, like Gvuras from Zoh. But here, it's the Gvura Koyach and Yamin. Bina.
Exactly right. Yeah. It's different than most people would read Pshat. They think it's the same Gvuras, right? It also makes Gishmak of the whole Posuk. Because you understand what's he trying to say here.
Yeah, it's not a kefil. It's two different things.
Right.
Not the same as the Hagavurs. We whack the and Sivos Torah.
By the way, we whack them to soften them. That's the point.
By the way, melilahs are fruit, are wheat that is ready, it's softened already.
That's what the Yechezkel said. Yeah.
When a worker is coming to the field, then he could take with his hand something which is ready. In general, I saw it, but you're not allowed to cut it and take the whole entire thing for you. So melilo is like shibolim that are softened, like he said here. This is gvuras deimo, bina.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's how it fits. It's the softening. Yeah.
I meant to say Hoshana Rabbah.
Yeah, Hoshana Rabbah. That's Hamtokas HaGvuras. The smack, the banging, the striking of the 5 Gvuras, of the 5 Hashanas, because Arava doesn't have no taste, no smell. It's Gvura. That's why it's like the willow tree. So it is comes from Gvura. The smacking is weakening the Gvuras. Va'inyan hu. Let's read a bit more because Rosh Hashanah, there's all Rosh Hashanah related. Maybe I'll go a little quicker to just finish here. Va'inyan hu, the inyan is the hini gvuresav hu inyan gvura v'keach. He's going to explain this whole idea now. Gvuresav is gvura v'keach. It's strength and power. Va'gvura hu biyamin dafke. And gvura is dafke biyamin. I know you know gvura is small. But he's talking here, Gvuresav, remember, Bina, Biyamin, Dafka. V'zel b'chinas ha'gvura is the ima.
Physical koyach is in the right hand.
Right, exactly. That the generally speaking, Yamin is Yod ha'gvura, and Yod Tei, what's the Lashon? Yod
Keho.
Keho.
Keho is the soil.
Is the smell. Okay.
So
Gvura is Biyamin. So he's teaching Dafka. These are the Gvuras of Bina, Shem B'chinas Yamin, Ubchinas hakeach. I'll tell you the truth, it's going to take long to explain this. I think we should probably stop here. See, I thought it's going to be easy to read. This I have to go through, explain every level here. Okay, you know what? We'll continue after Rosh Hashanah. It's fine. He's going to explain now at length more what Gvura is, difference between Gvura of Bina, Gvura of other Gvura, and coming back. But the theme has been stated that there's two types of Gvura. One is Gvuras of Zah, that's basically Gvuras Koshes. And there's Gvura of Bina, this is Gvuras Mumutokis, sweetened. By the way, it says about Rosh Hashanah that the first day is Dina Kosher, and the second day is Dina Rachia. It actually says about Rosh Hashanah that the first day is more severe and the second day is softer.
Where's Rashi saying it?
It's Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe, I think, says it.
But the Abishter doesn't write on Shabbos, so we're okay.
Well, on Shabbos softens everything. You ask me where it says it? It's from Zohar. The Zohar says the difference between Dina Kosher, Dina Rachia. I have to look it up. It's in Chassidus. Chassidus brings it. I didn't. I'm looking if he even mentions it here. What? I can't hear. What?
The Dina Kosher, when is that?
I just said it's from Zohar. It's brought to Chassidus in many places.
When is the Dina Kosher?
First day is the kasha, the second day is softer. It's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons that that the Rabbeim spoke less on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, if I recall correctly. Can you just mute? Who's okay? Fine. Let's stop here. Top of page 1153. We have good Rosh Hashanah material. So in case you get bored, you could always evoke and invoke these ideas.
It fits to the Sikha that the Rebbe said that even people that are not so pure and everything, will pass by, but we have to remember that we're going to our Father. This is our Father. It's Gvura is the Ima, Gvura is Memutokis.
Yeah, correct. Avarachman. Yeah. So everyone should have a ksivach simateva, good gebenched yard.
Amen, you too.
Our next year should be even greater and greater than this. It's a new year. Tonight, Arizal says
it should be great. Great, not only great, the grades.
I didn't finish. I was going to say that Arizal writes, Kisra Arizal it says, and Alter Rebbe cites it as well in Simin Yudalid, Nageres HaKedesh. Read it. It's very interesting, very good for Rosh Hashanah. That right before Rosh Hashanah, the whole world goes back to its source. Exactly what we've been learning. It goes back into like a comatose state and waiting and anticipating to be renewed. So that's why if you look in Tafshin Aleph, at Rosh Hashanah, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave a bracha that it should be a year, that the Tichla, the whole year and all its negative stuff should end and should be the beginning of year Tisa. Kisisa Sreish Tafshin Aleph. So now it's Tafshin Pei Aleph. Play Sarenu. It should be a year where all the negative is eliminated and we only have the positive of the Gula Mitis Vashlem. Everybody be healthy and strong. And
Thank you so much, Simon, for the whole entire time that you teaching and learning with us, and Hashem should bless you together with all of us. Ganz klar Soul.
Amen.
Amen.
Look, we're here together learning Chassidus. This is it. You know, your chutza. This is the last stand, the final frontier. The Rebbe, Ayin Beis was the last thing that Rebbe did not want to print until later years. So clearly we are piercing the concealment, sweetening the Gvura and piercing the concealment and transforming the Tzimtzum. So good. I look forward to continue learning and continue great things. And yes, your chutza should finally bring down Mashiach here, Bagoli.
And we should have that wonderful, incredible Gula Mashiach curriculum, Rabbi Jacobson. Amen.
Amen.
We will
Monday,
need it even after
10
Mashiach
o'clock.
comes, right? We will need it even after Mashiach comes, right?
Amen.
To understand and appreciate what's going on.
Monday, 10 o'clock.
Monday, 10 or 9:30. The Arichas on Monday.
I can't hear. The sound is not good. What'd you say?
How about Monday?